Just 1 cent, apparently. Anyway, moving on. Labor MP Matt Thistlethwaite wants Commonwealth Bank's name stripped from the Australian of the Year awards on the back of this year's Royal Commission. He says CBA was the worst offender and, quote, enough is enough. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, a San Francisco politician is seeking to have Mark Zuckerberg's name taken off the hospital that he donated $75 million to, following Facebook's recent series of scandals.
Yeah, got us thinking about the punishment that politicians seem to be trying to dish out when it comes to corporate wrongdoing. For tonight's Taking Stock, we're joined by Angela Fthulkas, founder of Australia's Small Business Party, and also Jack Delosa, founder of The Entourage and host of Entrepreneurs, the fabulous show here on Your Money, the other fabulous show on Your Money. Thanks for joining us, Jack and Angela. Yeah, I guess the Australia Day Awards, they recognise, as they say, leading citizens who are role models to us all. Mark Thistlethwaite certainly doesn't think that the CBA fits the bill. Is it inappropriate for them to be linked now?
I think it's always interesting when you kind of feel a bit like pot kettle black when you hear a politician passing judgment, and I can say that. But it's true. It's the right thing to do. I mean, we've had a banking royal commission. They're all on the nose. Any financial institution, pick a bank, any bank. None of them have come out of this well, and probably won't change things for quite some time. I mean, you just showed a piece before about ANZ. So I think Matt's stepping up and saying that they should be out of the Australia Day Awards. Yes, as long as no one turns up with a big black texter as an afterthought, because I'm sure most of the merchandise is already in place.
Yes, well, that's a good point.
So with sponsorship money, many other things, I'm sure there's some contractual obligations there.
They're involved a whole... I mean, banks broadly are involved in a whole lot of good stuff in the
including
community,
cricket. I wonder how that's going to go. Yeah. However, yeah, so it's disappointing. I mean, that they've always used their sponsorship name and dollars and rights to have that exposure. Now we're going to sit back and say, well, where does this stop and start? I mean, you know, so many other people withdraw sponsorship. You know, look at sport.
Well, hello, we were talking today about... CBA was the one that withdrew sponsorship from one of the...
Cricket Australia?
No, from one of the individual cricketers.
Yes, and I say again, pot, kettle,
black. Exactly. When the whole ball tampering scandal came, yeah, so they were the one that pulled sponsorship.
It certainly is interesting. Look, this CBA example is interesting. You know, Matt Thistlethwaite there perhaps trying to score a few points, but this is an international thing that's going on. We just mentioned there that Mark Zuckerberg's name is perhaps going to be dragged off a hospital that he donated $75 million to. Jack Delosa, what do you think?
Yeah, I understand the context in which the comment's being made. I think pot kettle black is a really good way to summarise what's going on in both of these stories. I do take a little bit of challenge to this in that, you know, I do think that we tend to go after business leaders a bit too much rather than taking a holistic view of what they've achieved, right? Like, Zuckerberg has created a community of 2 billion people. You know, he's probably done more to unite the world, albeit digitally, than perhaps anybody in history, you know. He's set up the Chen Zuckerberg Initiative with his wife. Guess how much of their personal wealth they've donated to the Chen Zuckerberg Initiative?
I have no idea.
99% of their personal wealth. And you know, this is an initiative...
Because in his case, the 1% is like so big.
Absolutely. Yeah. But previous generations...
And he only has T-shirts. What's he needed for?
Right. Yeah, that's true. He's got a few houses. But this is true, right? If you've got $40 billion, you probably you don't even need 1% of it. But in previous generations, we haven't seen that, right? So he's a business leader. He's a philanthropic leader. He's done a lot of good for the globe. And, you know, he's got shortcomings, as everybody does. You know, and he did give the hospital $75 million. And so I understand the context where the comment is coming from. However, I do think we just need to give people like Zuckerberg a little bit more recognition of what they actually contribute.
Yeah, I disagree.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, I have to say. When in the situation where you're donating to a hospital, and often they will name a wing or a building or whatever for philanthropic reasons, you know, to recognise the donation. But if you are indeed doing things like that with all the right reasons, you don't need or want your name on a wing anywhere.
Oh, so that's a very Australian attitude, though.
Well, no,
isn't it? Because you know, when it comes to philanthropy, the Americans are very good at leading by example.
They are by taking
why they
money.
put their name to
However,
things.
look at the privacy issues that Facebook has faced, and Zuckerberg has been dragged over the coals on that.
Okay,
I'm just saying, and hospitals have a lot big privacy issue. That's what they campaign on. They're keeping all medical things private. That is their goal. And
I actually agree with that. From a philanthropic perspective, you do wonder why the name went up in the first place. But I think that's a different argument to should his name be now stripped away in protest of recent events. I think they're two different conversations.
No, he gave it in all good faith. That's
right.
Okay, it's not a sponsorship situation.
So if they strip the name, do they give the money back?
Well, exactly.
Of course not. They spent it already. Too late.
We don't want your
tear down the
money.
building.
No, but actually, that's a serious point. Not to go backwards, but that's a serious point because if you speak to
Here's
the
your
people,
brick. Thank you.
But if you speak to the people in the philanthropy sector, that's one of their biggest problems, that in Australia we don't hold people up who donate big sums to charity and say, aren't they great, we should all do the same. We say, oh, they're going to do that, they should be quiet about it and just make that their private thing. And America has the exact opposite.
But most of our
maybe it's not the same issue,
are
but
quiet. Most of our biggest donors.
A lot of people think that's not a good thing.
But
so in terms of whether you deserved your name up in lights because of the money, I don't. Anyway, it's a separate discussion.
Well,
but I do think
it
that's
is a separate
interesting
discussion.
one.
And this is the main difference there. It's with Zuckerberg's name on a hospital, whereas it's CBA as a company and the idea of Australian of the Year. It's kind of it's an interesting thing, isn't it?
I know.
But the idea that the Australian of the Year, it's all about fair go and all of these sorts of great things that we appreciate in Australia.
And the standard that we hold that Australian of the Year too.
Yes.
But it comes back to your original point of how far do we go with this? Do we anyway.
How far do you go?
For ages. We could.
Hey,
We really could.
far be it from any of us to sit in judgment because
it's just a prickly one, isn't it?
True.
We're talking about first impressions tonight as well. A CEO of Ruling Group, he spends $3 each on a square metal business card, and he says, people think he's crazy. I think we initially thought that.
bit.
I could change my mind over the course of the day as I thought more about it. But he pays $3 for these business cards because he says they absolutely start conversations he might not otherwise have. People remember him. It's a great investment. What do you think? You guys saw it. He spends $9 on metal letterheads as well.
Yeah, the letterhead is a bit Flintstone-ish, so that
it is, because there it is. He leaves a little message, and
it's another good metaphor.
Hard to where do you put it, kind of thing.
There it is, just whacked on someone's desk.
Right.
Yeah, look, you could use it as a weapon, I'm sure. As
it's not very aesthetically pleasing, is it?
No, and
it's quite cold, but
do you have a baby wipe too to correct things if you've written it wrong?
Yeah.
But the business card one, that kudos to him because
do you like the business card?
Yeah, I love the business card idea. I couldn't do it. It'd put a hole in my wallet or my bag or something like that, or I'd scratch someone with it or myself. However, it is his job, though. It is his business, giftology, so he needs to lead by example, obviously. If he doesn't have the merchandise to back up the cred, then where's he going? And as he said, I think, if you read in the article, he was having a conversation with a rather senior CEO about what he does, and the guy's eyes glazed over because obviously his business is not hot stuff. But he handed over his business card, and then the whole demeanour changed and said, that's amazing. What do you do again?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, and it would stand out in a pack of cards.
Jack, would you advise people, you speak to startups and people trying to get their business going. First impressions absolutely count. We all know that.
Yeah. I wouldn't. It's not my thing. Funnily enough, I'm not much of a networker, actually. I'm quite introverted, but I don't believe in the whole...
I actually did a video before he came.
No, I actually am. I know you might surprise you, but I actually am.
3 takes to get it right, yeah.
I'll send you my test results.
Perfectionist as well, obviously.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about tactics with first impressions, and I think the key thing with a first impression is are we connecting as human beings?
Yep.
And for me, the pathway to that is authenticity. And so whether if you're introverted, or if you're shy, or if you're extroverted and charismatic, I don't actually mind. It's just be yourself, and that will enable connection to occur. For me, the business card stuff's a bit gimmicky. It would actually turn me off.
But it is his business. Merchandise is his business.
But if you're in a situation...
I'm going to turn Jack off.
For him, it works.
Exactly.
I have to respect every business owner, whatever they do to get ahead, because it is so hard anyway. Yeah. So if that's his advantage, good on him for recognising
that's right. And people say, people say, you're going to send yourself broke handing out $3 business cards. And he said, no, my business has improved.
That's
and for me, that's worked for me. So, I'm making more money now than I was.
Now, here are the questions, right? How many does he carry around with him? Do they go off through metal detectors?
Yes.
I love this is where your mind goes.
I just had a thought.
What about when you go to the airport?
What happens, and how many can you take?
So what do you reckon is the best way for good first impressions? What do you think? Jack says authenticity, some honesty. What do you think?
Looking in the eye, handshake, all that?
Yeah, well, I have a political background now, so first impressions are everything because people need to remember you. You may not see them again for another 6 months. There could be an election in between. You are asking people to trust you with a huge decision, so yes, first impressions are absolutely, for me, almost everything, because I'm relying on that small memory to carry me through to something else.
They'll see on TV and say, oh, that girl, I met her once
I
in the
remember
shops.
I saw her on the TV.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, I met a local politician around my local shops, and I never forget that interaction because it was not a good one. And I was very glad when he didn't stay in politics. Let's move on. Millions are still going to be able to watch Springsteen on Broadway at home at no extra cost because they have Netflix. So this is quite an interesting one. People in the US are just spending thousands, apparently up to $6,000 to get a ticket to this Bruce Springsteen on Broadway show. Let's have a quick preview for you.
This is what I've presented to you all these years as my long and noisy prayer, as my magic trick. And like all good magic tricks, it begins with a setup.
There you go.
So cool.
It's going to be on
Very
Netflix. It was an interesting one for us. The age of digital platforms versus the in-person experience. What did you think about this one?
I'm an in-person guy. I think there's no substitute for the experience and the energy of a live theatre with thousands of people. I think we spend far too much time in front of screens. Now, it's great that it's on Netflix because it digitises it, and so, you know, if you're unable to get to a live show, then you're able to see it. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Accessible.
But if I had my choice, I would absolutely be in the arena 10 times out of 10.
Even for $6,000, what do you think?
Yeah,
$6 grand. I didn't know that.
Up to.
Jack was almost going to say, I'd take his all.
Yeah, off we go.
At $60 maybe.
Yeah, well, so sport, I think, is a great example here of what does work live and what doesn't.
Yep.
So you know, you can go to a live game. Personally, I will watch any live game in any sport. I don't care what it is. I'm happy to turn up. I won't watch everything on the telly. I find it very boring, very one-dimensional. But some people sort of think, you know, you get the best view of a game on the telly, so it's important. But I'll use football or rugby league as a comparison. If you've ever attended a live league game and you've sat close to the line and you actually hear the physical contact of the players and how hard they slam each other when there's a tackle, then you have a full appreciation for live and what they're actually doing, because you don't get that effect on the telly.
This is why you like politics as well?
It's a rush. It's got to be face to face. When you throw someone down, you're going to see the look on their face and they go, how did she do that? So it's really important. I think you have an appreciation for what they're doing, the talent, the skill, none of those things translate through a screen. And that's what you miss in a live show. I mean, it's nothing like seeing Bruce live.
It's true. I think you're absolutely right. And on the sports point, I mean, I try to go along to as many AFL games as humanly possible, but it is a bit of a gamble as to who you're sitting near, because that is something that can kind of ruin the whole experience for you. I mean, I went along every week when I was living in Melbourne to Etihad Stadium with my family, and there was a guy who sat next to us who got the unoriginal name Angry Guy. And he was horrible to sit near, and he kind of really did put us all off. I hope he's watching. He didn't pull your life together. But seriously, it's this whole gamble.
That might have been me on the Anzac Day game.
Yeah, exactly.
St George versus Roosters.
But it's this whole thing of can it all be spoiled so easily if you spend good money and you kind of get all excited about it. Whereas in Netflix mode, you're in your safe space. You've got your surround speakers on, all that sort of stuff.
You don't have angry person at home. You don't have someone at home who's barracking for the other side.
You know, one other thing interesting about this story is some of these technologies when they first came out, Netflix and Spotify, we thought it would be the death of some of the things like, like live shows. Well, everyone can just get Spotify now, or, we worried for a time that artists would even survive. And now you're just seeing that actually complements what they do.
They're doing more intimate shows.
Yeah, and people like Billy Joel apparently making more money than ever in some ways. Yeah. Still just on these live tours, it's just a different offering, which I think is interesting. It's certainly not a threat to what they do, but
was originally
making
disruptive.
More money. Originally it was a threat, and now it's just a massive opportunity for them.
I think there's a huge place for both. You know, the digital stuff on Netflix and all of that, it enables an artist or a sports team or a sports coach to reach far more people. But I think humans are always going to crave that visceral, in-person, energetic experience.
For the benefit of the human race, I hope so.
Well,
Otherwise,
VR is the only thing that I think could contend with that, because we might be able to experience all of those things through a screen, and in the next sort of 10 years or so. So that might challenge it, but we crave the experience, however we might get it.
Well,
We
as,
had,
as soon as they run an election campaign with VR, then I might be in trouble.
we had a company called Start VR on this very program just a week or two ago. We had a bit of a sneak preview about, with the way it's all headed, and entertainment is the massive part of it.
Yep.
Huge opportunities there. Thank you very much, Angela and Jack. Thank you as always for coming in to Taking Stock here on Your Money Live.